Whether you're waiting to catch the midnight flight or in a layover, the airport has many stories, from happy to sad, sentimental, heartbreaking to scary. So grab a blanket, turn off your lights for three true scary stories that happened at the airport.
Stranded in an airport while traveling alone. Hi guys, I'm a 20-year-old female, and this took place in March. I was 19 at the time. It was the end of spring break, and I was returning to Texas from California. I just spent my vacation with my sister, who lives in San Francisco. Every college kid counts down the days until spring break, and my vacation had gone rather well. However, I was slightly okay with returning to essays and research papers because I missed my friends, my bed, and my cat. I was flying alone, something I don't like doing for multiple reasons, and had only one layover in Dallas. I don't like traveling alone because I've had some bad experiences, and I happen to look a lot younger than 20. Most people say I was 13 or 14 at the most. I've always hated this about myself, but I'm told I'll be grateful when I'm older. As of now, it's just immensely frustrating. The last time I was on a plane by myself, the attendant thought I was an unaccompanied minor. I quickly assured her I was not the minor in question. The time before that, I was asked to move away from the emergency exit because you have to be at least 16 to sit there. Anyways, my boyfriend was picking me up from the airport and I was excited. I wore the pink members only jacket he had bought for me and tried to look my best, which is difficult to do when traveling. When the plane arrived in Dallas, we had some really terrible weather and the turbulence was scary. But no matter what, soon I would be on another flight to Houston. I took the train around to the C terminal and made my way to my gate only to find that, due to torrential rain and lightning, my flight had been canceled. I was crushed, but determined, so I took my ticket to be exchanged for a later flight. It seemed many others had the same grievance and were opting to do the same. As I was standing in line, a friendly-looking older man came up to stand behind me. "Are you alone?" he asked. Everyone seemed to be conversing with one another, complaining about the weather and pondering their options to get home. It didn't seem like a big deal, because strangers always seem to connect in situations like this one. We were all frustrated. I also felt safe in the crowded airport, so I answered him truthfully and continued to wait in the line. The man behind the counter said I was in luck, that there were only 2 seats left on another flight to Houston, and that I could make it if I hurried. I rushed aboard the train to the A terminal to catch my new flight, and upon reaching the gate, was faced with the same situation. The new flight was canceled too. The man from before had followed me to the gate and was in the same boat. I exchanged my ticket for a later flight and marched myself to the new gate, only to be told the same as before. This happened literally 2 or 3 more times, because I didn't want to give up and really had no other options. The man shadowed me during the entire ordeal, and I didn't really find it strange. We were just 2 individuals stranded in an airport. The last gate I went to, I noticed he was still following me. He walks over to me and begins to chat about what awful luck we were having. Someone eavesdropping nearby suggests that I rent a car. I politely tell them that I'm not old enough. The man smiles and says to me, "Well, I'm old enough to rent a car. How about this? I'll rent us one. You can sleep and I'll drive." I look at him, and the way he's staring at me scares me. I finally begin to feel that something is off. I respond, No, but thank you, I'm going pretty far." His smile falters for a moment, then he suggests that he buys me some food. I'm starving, I'm tempted. I hesitate for a moment, but then I remember a book I had read about a girl who was stolen from the airport after a man drugs her coffee. This gives me the strength to deny my grumbling stomach and decline him again. He follows me, I don't know why. He's already told me he's going to rent a car and leave. He points to a Mexican restaurant and says, "Oh, how about this place?" He has this strange look on his face and is standing far too close to me. I shake my head and say, "I told you, I'm not really hungry. Lie. Big lie. I can smell something delicious, and I almost give in. But my face does not betray my hunger, and I keep my pace. Okay, what about burgers then? He looks a bit annoyed. The guy does not give up easy. I ignore him. This causes him to glare at me angrily, and then stalk away. I breathe a sigh of relief. I call my sister and tell her about him, not in a catty sort of way, just a wow, that guy was persistent kind of thing. I settle into a chair and think about my options. I feel pretty worried and alone. My latest ticket has me leaving around midnight, and it was around 9 p.m. at that point. I had been in the airport since 5 p.m. If this last flight didn't work out, I had no clue what I would do. I have no money for a hotel and didn't fancy sleeping in a chair. I look up around 30 minutes later to see the same man walking towards me. I tuck my legs in my chair nervously and pretend to play on my phone. "Hey there, still here?" he asks. He seems to have cooled down. I just stare at him. He clears his throat and tries again. "So I was thinking, you should come stay at my aunt's house with me for the night. That's where I'm staying tonight. It would be no problem. You don't want to be in this airport all night, all alone." I shake my head and say, "No, I'm fine." Then turn my attention back to my phone. I didn't even make eye contact. I felt really uncomfortable. He tries to convince me, and I have to say no firmly several more times. He looks angry, really angry. His hands are clenched, and his smile is obviously fake. It looks as if he will shatter his teeth if he clenches his jaw any tighter. I have to wonder to myself why he hasn't left the airport yet. Then I notice that his luggage is no longer with him. He was rolling it behind him, and now he isn't. Where would have he put it if he hadn't left yet? And so much time has passed. Why is he back here? As I'm thinking all of this, he's still just standing there, staring. After what feels like forever, he storms off again. I feel so anxious because of him that I grab my things and move to a different gate to wait. My phone was dying, and I didn't want to be without it, so I had to charge it. I had to plug it into the outlet in the floor. I curled up in the aisle between the chairs to wait. My sister called about an hour later, and I was talking to her, telling her how creepy the dark weather outside looked, when I see him again, walking around, glancing here and there, in search of me. I hunched down even farther, but my pink jacket was like a beacon. He locked eyes with me, and I looked down. My sister said to stay on the phone, so I did. "Well, there you are," he says, not even acknowledging that I'm in the middle of a phone call. I continue talking to my sister when it becomes apparent that he isn't leaving and doesn't care I'm on the phone. I finally look up. "So you are still here? Look, you need to come with me. You can stay with me at my grandparents' tonight. They would love to have you. They won't mind me bringing you at all. Just come with me." I got chills. I don't know why, but something in his eyes told me he was lying through those shiny white teeth of his. "You said you were staying with your aunt." His face dropped. It went from cool and collected to something else. Not even anger this time, and not defeat either. Almost like amusement. Something like the cat that ate the cannery. He shrugs his shoulders like, "I tried." But we both recognize that he was caught in his lie. The entire time my sister is saying, "Hello?" repeatedly, but I was sort of shocked by how indifferent he was to me catching on to him. I go back to my conversation and he says, "Well, if you change your mind," and lets the thought trail off while walking away backwards, eyes still on me. I call my boyfriend and tell him about each exchange, and he tells me to find a security guard to tell. I look around for one but couldn't find one. It was creepy because I'd never seen an airport so deserted. I end up just deciding to move again and lay down between two different aisles out of view. A boy my age walks by and asked, "Why are you laying on the floor?" And I responded a tad aggressively with, "Because I want to." He laughs, puts up his hands, and the unspoken sign for "whoa, take it easy." I apologize for my gruffness and tell him that a man was making me nervous. He jokingly says he'll protect me, and because he seems harmless and I mention my boyfriend, I converse with him for a while. He tells me he saw me and wondered why the blonde girl looked so sad. A little while later, I am thankful I did not brush off the stranger because I see the man again walking around. We made eye contact, but he did not attempt to approach me because I was no longer alone. Maybe he was just some middle-aged man trying his luck at getting a girlfriend or something, but scaring someone isn't the way to do it. Even if he meant me absolutely no harm, he was too aggressive and too angry. Thanks for reading. Sorry for the length. Almost abducted at Paris airport. So, this happened to a friend of mine this past summer. I'm sorry if it's not a personal story. Actually, I'm glad it's not a personal story. It's a bit long, but I wanted to share it as a cautionary tale. About 20 students, myself included from my university, did a student abroad program in France last summer. We were spending a week in Paris before going to the town where the university was located. Most of the group got a group flight deal to Paris through the university. Others flew separately. The only requirement was that we had to be in Paris by the day we had to leave to go to our university. Most of us had arrived by the third day in our Paris trip, except for my friend, Amanda. Naturally, we were all worried about her, because her phone wasn't working. She had to update us from Facebook whenever she could get free Wi-Fi, which wasn't very often. Her flight had been delayed about 6 times already. Another day passed, still nothing from Amanda. We were all freaking out at this point. Since her phone wasn't working, we couldn't even contact her. The 5th day rolls around, still nothing. We all had a scheduled bike tour of the city from the morning and a boat ride on the river that afternoon, so we didn't return to the hotel until about 7 that evening. When I got in, Amanda was asleep in our room. We were assigned roommates. Of course, I woke her up and asked her where the hell she'd been. She told me that she'd finally got to the airport. She was exhausted and broke. She had multiple layovers and had basically spent all of her on-hand cash on food, plus her bank card wasn't working. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Charles de Gaulle airport, it is fucking massive. Unless you have a map or understand French completely, you will get lost. So she gets there, lost, broke, tired, hungry, and carrying 3 big-ass bags, sitting inside the terminal. She said this good-looking guy walks up to her and started talking to her in perfect English. "You look tired. Do you need a taxi to your hotel?" Red flag 1. What taxi driver gets out of their cab and walks into the airport to find a rider? Not thinking, she says, "Yes, thank you so much. I'm exhausted." He smiles at her and grabs one of her heavier bags and tells her to follow him. She does, and he leads her to this elevator. Red flag 2. She was already on street level, where all the taxis depart. She gets inside, and he hits the bottom for the basement level. He gets on the phone before the elevator opens and starts speaking in French, which she couldn't really understand because it was slang. She starts freaking out though when the door opens. It was a service desk meant for employees of the airport or something, not for passenger parking or taxi pickup. It was damp and dark, and as she said, something literally out of a horror movie. The guy gets out of the elevator first and turns to her smiling. "Allons, let's go." She takes a few steps and sees, in the far corner of the deck, the trunk of this green unmarked van with no license plate open, and a huge ugly-ass Middle Eastern guy steps out of the driver's seat. At this point, she realizes she's in trouble, but she doesn't want to alert the smiling guy that she's about to get the fuck out of there. There's no one in sight, so screaming would be useless, but the lift door is still open. She quickly placed one of her bags in the middle of the lift entrance and told the smiley guy that she needed her wallet that was in the bag that he was carrying. He looks at her sternly for a minute, but walks over to her and hands her the bag. She told me she pushed him down onto the ground with the weight of the bag and got back into the elevator as fast as she could. He got up and was bounding after her. She said, "Girl, I hit every goddamn button on that elevator panel." The door closed as soon as he reached her, and she could hear him banging on them as she was going back up to street level. She got to the taxi pickup lane and started bawling. A police officer approached her. She told him what happened, and he drove her to the hotel. On the way, he told her that the men were likely linked to a sex trafficking ring and were approaching young women inside the airport who had tags on their luggage indicating they had come from the US, assuming that American women were more trusting. Thoroughly creeped out and stalked through the airport by a mad woman. So I was reading similar stories and figured I should share my story and see what other people's take on it is, because to this day, I am still baffled by this experience. Anyways, I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and had flown out to Los Angeles for the weekend. My friends put on a yearly music festival at a biker bar out around Joshua Tree, just a relatively small thing, where most of the attendees are also musicians and everyone knows each other. So we drank heavily for 3 days or so. By the end of it, you tend to need at least 1 week to recover. So I was flying back to Texas, wildly hungover and miserable and completely drained. I had a flight from LA to Dallas, then a quick hop to Austin from there. I was seated by the window, on the left side where there were only 2 seats. Seated in the aisle seat was a middle-aged woman, totally unremarkable, just your average Texan mom. We made polite small talk for a few minutes, but I really felt like doing nothing but curling up in a ball against the wall and passing out. So shortly after takeoff, I put in my headphones and started watching a movie on my iPod until I fell asleep. Throughout the movie, I thought I noticed her trying to look over my shoulder and watch the movie too, and then mumbling something like, "Oh great, just ignore me." This happened several times, but I convinced myself I was just misreading her. Eventually, I noticed her furiously scribbling writing in the margins of a beat-up leather-bound book. I kept peeking over at it, seeing that the entire book was filled with unintelligible chicken scratch and pretty much every bit of available space in the margins. I also noticed it was an Alcoholics Anonymous book. Whatever I thought, just someone with some issues. I eventually fell asleep. Wake up, landing in Dallas. People start getting off the plane. Lady makes zero effort to start packing her things up or get ready to go. She keeps sitting there scribbling in her book. As I said, I'm wildly hungover and kinda cranky, and have no patience of anything that's prolonging the time I have to spend on an airplane. I gets to our row, and it's her turn to move into the aisle, and again, she does not move at all. The row behind us starts to leave. I finally say, "Hey, I got a connection to catch, so I have to get moving here," gesturing towards the aisle and standing up. She laughs, shakes her head, looks up at me and goes, "Oh no. No. You are not going anywhere." I was so confused. My mind was not at its sharpest that day. I respond with, "I assure you I am going somewhere. I'm getting off this plane now." She shook her head again and said, "But you promised me you'd never leave me." Now other people who are leaving the plane are looking at this exchange, also baffled, and I make eye contact with a few people, giving that "can you believe this" look, before just edging and shoving my way out of the row, saying, "Nope, nope, I certainly never said that, I'm leaving now." As I edged past, she sighed and said, "Well, I guess I gotta go with you then." At which point she stands up behind me, leaving her purse and book and all her belongings on the plane, and follows me out. All through the tunnel, and through the terminal, and up the escalator, this woman follows me at my heels, grinning like a mad woman the entire time. I'm walking fast, but she is right on my heels. I didn't say anything at first, but my mind kept saying, why is this happening now, of all the days? I just did not want to deal with whatever the hell breakdown this woman was having, not with the way I was feeling. I eventually get to the waiting area for the monorail to the next terminal, where my connecting flight is, and she slides up right next to me, still grinning. At this point, I say, "Alright, seriously, why are you following me like this?" Her response this time was, "Because I love you, and you promised me that you would never be apart from me." I laughed nervously and looked around at the strangers also waiting for the train, making sure I loudly announced, "No, I did not promise that. I have no idea who you are, okay?" The train arrives. I get on. She obviously follows. Now she's trying to hold my hand. I'm moving around the monorail car, texting the girl I was seeing at the time about what is going on, and how I'm actually kind of terrified by this woman. My phone was at 1% though, and died before I could get a response. I was actually getting severely creeped out by this woman. Her eyes were completely vacant. There was just nothing but emptiness in her stare. She didn't blink, coupled with her unyielding grin. I was becoming sure it was only a matter of time before she snapped and proceeded to stab me or shove me down an escalator or something. She's still grabbing at my hand and following me as I shove around the tiny train car, and I announce to the other strangers, "I have no idea who this woman is. Seriously, can anyone get a hold of security or something?" But everyone responded with silence. Nobody else wanted to deal with this either. I felt like I was the crazy one now, making random statements to a train full of strangers. We finally get to the other terminal. I near run to my gate, with her right behind me, still saying things like, "You can't get away from me this time." I get to the gate and spend a moment scanning the crowd. I see a woman in what looked like a police uniform waiting, and I say, "Excuse me, are you security or police or, see this lady?" But she just shakes her head at me. Everyone in the crowd just does their best to ignore us. You would be amazed at how hard it is to find security or police in a damn airport these days when you really need them. Finally, I go up to the desk and shamelessly interrupt the agent standing there. Doing my best to maintain composure, I put on a half smile and explain to them, "Hi there. So this woman standing right there to me here, I have no idea who she is, and she's been following me for quite some time now." Both the agents laugh. The male one makes a comment like, "Oh, long vacation, huh? Seriously, what can I help you with?" The crazy lady laughed with them, rolling her eyes at my absurd assertion that I did not know her. I chuckled, shook my head, and said again, "No, I mean it. I have no idea who this woman is." They finally saw the desperation in my eyes and the seriousness of my tone, and their smiles faded. Can we see your boarding passes?" I handed him mine. She produced hers from her pocket as I continued explaining. "She was on my previous flight. She even left her purse on that plane, all the way in the other terminal." The agents speak with themselves off to the side for a moment, while I completely ignore the woman, just swatting away her hand as she tries to hold mine for the 100th time. The agents make a quick few hushed calls and then come back over and just say, "Come with me." They immediately whisk me through the door and slam it on my pursuer, and I'm loaded onto the plane about 10 minutes before any other passenger, as a stream of staff filters by each other offering a new apology. Eventually, the rest of the passengers get on, and they all shoot me glances as they pass my row, some of sympathy, others of sheer confusion. The man who sits behind me asks me, "Hey man, what was that?" I give him the brief version, and he tells me, "She had a complete and total meltdown the second you got on the plane, screaming, tearing her hair out, pounding her feet. They took her away in handcuffs. You really didn't know her?" Nope, I didn't. To this day, I still wonder all the time what the hell was going on with that woman. I barely even have told this story to many of my friends because it's just so unbelievable. I never received any other information about the incident never learned who she was or why she thought I promised her anything, let alone an eternal companionship and love. To this day, when I think about the look in her eyes when she said, "You promised me you never leave me," my skin crawls so effing